Alrighty. So this video is just for people who are using Visual Studio Code. Again, I still recommend people at least give it a chance. It's a very nice editor, very lightweight, and I pretty much replaced Sublime for me, to be honest with you. However, we have an issue. And the issue is that Visual Studio Code, and Visual Studio for that matter, kind of treat individual folders, or not folders, but certain directories as JavaScript projects. So they're kind of JavaScript projects inside of our current project. And we already saw an example of this before when we created the JSConfig file. And you'll notice over here that I have ES2015 syntax on this let woe equals 20. And if I hover over it, it'll give me an error that'll actually tell me how to fix the issue. But there's a nuance to this that I want to talk about in addition to this particular error. So the error says this can only be used with ES6. Again, ES6 is actually ES2015. Make sure to have a JSConfig file to set the target. And you'll also notice an error on the right-hand side, which says, cannot redeclare block-scoped variable woe. So, first of all, it's treating these two files as basically being in the same project, because there is no JSConfig to work with. There's no JSConfig telling Visual Studio Code to do things differently than it does by default. I could go ahead and fix this, part of this, by creating a new file called JSConfig.json, and adding a compiler options property or key and setting its target to ES6. And if I save that out, and I'm going to go ahead and close these files and close this file as well, and then I'm going to open up this file again, notice how it's no longer complaining about let. So it is now letting us use ES26 or ES2015 features. But we're still getting this error. It says let woe equals 20, cannot redeclare block scoped variable woe. Now the problem with this is this is going to be added as a global object, a global variable in our project, and because this JSConfig.json file is located at the root of our project, Visual Studio Code thinks that this JavaScript file and this JavaScript file are different files in the same project, as opposed to the reality where this JavaScript file is a compilation of this JavaScript file. To fix this, we could certainly, the primary way you're going to fix this is I recommend putting your JSConfig.json file not in a folder that's shared by both your client and your server code, or both your uncompiled and your compiled code. I recommend placing it directly in the folder where you're going to be writing your ES6 code. So I'm going to take this JSConfig file, drag and drop it into source scripts. And by doing that, notice how the error went away. So we're no longer getting an error on woe. An alternative way to do this, or to fix this, would be to use the self-executing function pattern, where we wrap our code inside of a self-executing function. This way, our objects won't be treated as global variables as far as Visual Studio Code is concerned. I will be using this syntax for this series because we're going to be redeclaring a lot of variable names in different files, and I don't want to create a bunch of JSConfig files and put them in different folders. So again, if you've never seen this syntax before, this is just a self-executing function. I could, of course, shorten it with arrow functions that we've already talked about by doing that. And all it does is it makes sure that if I went ahead and compiled this, it makes sure that these local variables don't escape the this scope and don't become global variables. So at this point, I could take this JSConfig file, drop it back down to the root, close that out, close this out, open it back up again, and notice how we don't get that error either. So I'll just leave the JSConfig file at the root, or I still actually prefer keeping it local with the with your client scripts or with your server scripts. And the reason for that is sometimes your server code, if you're writing in JavaScript for your backend, might have different JSConfig options than your client code. So I guess keeping the JSConfig there might be a good idea, but we will be using self-executing functions as well to manage scope. Anyway, again, this video is just for Visual Studio Code people, and I guess we will start off in the next video with talking about what this let means, as well as what const means. And so I guess we'll see you then.